Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Friday, June 5th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. Missouri beat writer Souichi Terada joins us today to talk about the last few days in Missouri athletics. It was an interesting time as the football team led a peaceful march from campus to the Boone County Courthouse. The march wasn't the end of the task. While at the courthouse, some 62 student athletes registered to vote. How great is that? Athletes will begin voluntary workouts on Monday, and we talk about that and how the Tigers have changed their approach to testing for COVID-19. After a break, we'll hear from Tigers head football coach Eli Drinkwitz, who on a Zoom call met with reporters earlier this week. So here we go with Souichi Terada. Hey Souichi, how you doing?
I'm not too bad. It's starting to get a little hot here in mid-Missouri from Michigan, so I'm not used to that, but we'll power through.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. We're getting our summer. It's not so much the highs, in the 90s and the mid 90s here. It's the lows in the mid 70s that make it. I don't know what's going on. A summer in early June. We don't deserve this, but hey, we'll battle through it. Hey, interesting times at Mizzou here the last few days, and obviously for not anything that's happened on a field or a court, because nothing's happened on a field or a court, but interesting times at Mizzou anyway. Why don't you take us through let's start with the march that Mizzou athletes, coaches, and even some athletic and administrators embarked on the other day, and where it started, where it finished, and what was accomplished by the march.
Yeah, so Mizzou football players, they wanted to do something, obviously, with everything going on between the protests, especially after, just starting a dialogue after George Floyd's death in Minneapolis, just like much of the nation has done. So it really started last week based on what Drinkwitz and some of the players were saying. They were talking about they wanted to do something. So it was really a dialogue between some of the assistant coaches, namely Curtis Looper, running backs coach, defensive coordinator Ryan Walters, and Coach Cheese, as they call him, Charlie Harbison, one of the secondary coaches. And so between those three and a few others and a few players, namely Nick Bolton, Martez Manuel, they came up with this idea of a march, and then it really did kind of take a life of its own, I think, within the last few days. And then it was kind of funny just because some players were like, yeah, we heard about it an hour before, and then we knew we had to be there. And in this pandemic world, COVID-19 world, I'm sure they weren't doing exactly too much, as many listeners I'm sure know. So yeah, and so they gathered at 2 p.m. Wednesday at the famous columns at Mizzou, and then they made their way down to Boone County Courthouse. And the thing that really struck me was just how much support this had between not just the football players, because it seemed like pretty much every football player around on campus showed up, but it was also the assistant coaches. Eli Drinkwitz was obviously there, but Cunozo Martin was there, Robin Pingeton was there, Jim Sterk was there, Mun Choi was there, Columbia PD was there, University Police were there. So this had a lot of support just from not just the police officers, but administration, other coaches, and everything. And so that unified front, I think, really was such a positive step, especially considering Mizzou's history, especially with 5 years from now,
right.
Already 5 years away from 2015 and everything. So there's some context there. And then so they made the walk. Once they got to the courthouse, they locked arms, and there's this very powerful photo in one of my articles that published this morning, or I guess yesterday. They locked arms. They knelt for 8 minutes 46 seconds in honor of George Floyd, which I think is a great touch, and it kind of shows how long of a time that is, and some of the players spoke about that. Once they did that, 62 players went out and registered to vote. I think we're going to see a little bit more from that. I think once the national media kind of heard about this, they were like, whoa, voting, that's something like very substantial. That's something very real that people can do. And then it's going to make a change. So that's kind of been the big positive reception, I think. And we might see more of that from other programs, which is great to see, just because voting obviously is so crucial in our society. So that's kind of where things kind of materialize. And then from there, here we are talking about it. And I really do think that voting key aspect is it really is a positive thing, that no matter who, your background, whatever you think politically, like that's a big thing, just because everyone can vote and use their voice.
Well, that's exactly right. That was my big takeaway from the march. It wasn't just a march or a photo op. It ended in something substantial, registering to vote. And I think the number was 62 student athletes who registered to vote, which is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And you're absolutely right. When I saw that it was sort of it became a little bit of a national story, or at least picked up by a couple of national websites, and the reaction has been nothing but positive as it should be. So the and it might, what it did was it extended the discussion to me in a positive way. We have, the week of the unrest, the demonstrations, the protests over, racism and social injustices, and those have been effective, and the conversation has never been as deep and thoughtful as, for these matters at any time in my life. This week has proved that the conversation has endured throughout the week, not just a weekend or a couple of days, but throughout the week. And protests are going to continue, I think, through the weekend. I know tonight in Kansas City, but to have at the end of a march the symbol of taking the knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and then to register student athletes to vote, to me was just I salute Missouri for this, and it is going to make a difference. And I have heard other schools talking about, what are they going to, what are they going to do on November 3rd? Are they going to practice, or are you going to encourage your athletes to vote? And I think that's a conversation that needs to be had on campuses throughout the country. Famously, Nick Saban, I think it was the 2016 election day, it fell on, an Alabama news conference day, said he didn't even know it was election day. And Will Muschamp said something in 2018 during the midterms, something similar. And I thought, in both cases, we just kind of smiled at the tone deafness of the coaches, but it is more serious than that. And Mizzou helped make the point this week that it is, it's agent change, right? It's you get the opportunity to make a difference, and not just in national elections, but local elections as well. So anyway, I that's my soapbox. I just thought it was a powerful move. And my Eli Drinkwitz hasn't coached a game at Missouri, but if this was his idea, no matter whose idea it was a terrific one.
Yeah, and so quick thing, it was the walk itself was Martez Manuel's idea, and it seemed like one of the coaches. I've been told Ryan Walters had a pretty big hand in the whole voting aspect, and I think the big thing here is just pointing at actually doing something. I mean, a lot of folks, a lot of brands, companies, coaches, whoever it is in this society are really talking about change, and that's a good thing. Having that conversation is a good thing, but I think action here really showed who the Mizzou football program and who they are and just what they wanted to do. Just because everyone has had a statement. If you have any type of public platform, but actually doing something and voting, especially, I really think they kind of showed who they are as people. And for Mizzou fans, that's a positive, because it's a great thing to be able to use your platform and everything like that.
Yeah, and look, and so that's part one. Part two is when election day rolls around, which will be complicated because of the pandemic. But what are you going to do to encourage your players? It's one thing to register to vote. Now go out and do it. And I hope that was impressed upon the athletes. And but anyway, great first step by Mizzou here. Hey, so let's talk about the other pieces of news this week. We have a date for Missouri's return, and I think it's an SEC-wide date, is it not? June the 8th. That's the day that SEC schools can allow athletes back, football players back on campus for voluntary workouts. Take us through the timing and the process of how this is going to work, and of course the testing, because even that changed. I guess the testing conversation changed this past week.
Yeah, so June 8th is that target day for the SEC. And Blair, as we know, the NCAA approved a different day, which is June 1st, which was last Monday. But the SEC took it, maybe a step further, I guess, and they were like, okay, let's wait till June 8th. That's when we're going to have, initially, it was going to be football, men's basketball, and women's basketball athletes only. And then they open it up to every sport. So Mizzou's plan, though, is that those three sports I mentioned, football and the two basketball teams, they will start on June 8th. And a big distinction I think people should understand is that these are only voluntary workouts, meaning only strength and conditioning coaches are allowed to supervise them. So this isn't actually coaching per se. It isn't Eli Drinkwitz, coming out here and showing them, let's talk scheme and everything. They still have 8 hours of remote training to do, but it's mostly just for the players' benefit in terms of just getting in shape and everything. So, but yes, the original plan, Mizzou, Jim Sterk had mentioned a day before this all actually came together, was that Mizzou was actually only going to test athletes who were showing symptoms or were traveling from hotspot areas. And a lot of experts around college football, a lot of health experts as well, they were like, okay, that's probably not going to work, just because based on what we know about, COVID-19, you might not be showing symptoms, but you might still be spreading it. And if you're in workout groups, you're sweating it up, especially if you're indoors, that's looking dangerous. So Mizzou reverse course. They say they're going to test every athlete. That actually started Thursday and is continuing into Friday. So we should hear if there are any positives over the weekend, likely. And then,
Right.
and then we go from there. And then, based on what we heard yesterday from Eli Drinkwitz, it's mostly going to be around groups of 20-ish doing workouts and everything. And then they'll be socially distanced. They'll be, they'll make sure they don't have any temperatures coming in, any symptoms. So, but I think based on what it sounds like, based on what Drinkwitz said, based on what I'm hearing, this is phase one, first and foremost. And I think this is kind of, I don't want to say guinea pigs just because it is a pandemic, but they really are seeing how this is going to happen, because we're already seeing other schools saying they have athletes test positive. Alabama had 5 come out, Alabama had 5, Arkansas State, I believe, had 7. Like, what are we going to do once we have positive cases? Because if one positive case shuts us down, then this wasn't safe to begin with. So I really do think if this goes smoothly and there aren't any huge problems with it, I think that'll be really good first step in terms of just practices, football starting on time this fall, and all these things. So I think there's a lot at stake here for college football in general and for really sports, just because we're seeing what could happen if we do get these kids together who are traveling from all these different places.
Right. Look, this is the first step in this type of of activity, of kind of group working. Look, the MLS has had some workouts here, and NBA players have been back in working out, but baseball hasn't, and the NFL hasn't, and now the NFL is saying that the players won't be around until training camp begins. So really, college football and college sports with players returning to campus for voluntary workouts is really one of the first opportunities for athletes together in a group setting. And we're seeing something there, like you said, we're seeing some early news come out of that. Oklahoma State had 3 players, including one that contracted it, test positive, including one that got it from a protest march in Tulsa. So. And it just occurred to me, did Alabama get a jump on the voluntary practice thing? If they're already testing positive and they're not supposed to be together until June the 8th, I'm going to figure out how that worked.
Yeah, for Alabama, some tested positive. I believe the timeline was Wednesday. They had about 50 players practice together, and I put that in quotation marks because they did that on their own. So it wasn't like sanctioned by coaches or anything. We'll put it in quotation marks just because, the nature of college football. But, and then on Thursday, they found out 5 of them tested positive. So what do you do with those 50 players? Not sure yet. Right. I think that's kind of the big question, really, just because, if 3 players from a 20-person workout group test positive, then what do you do with the other 17? Do they all socially isolate for 2 weeks? What kind of happens there? So I think we'll see more details coming up soon.
Absolutely, and I think the rest of June, as other conferences, I know the SEC is June 8th, and I think the Pac-12, the Big 12 are June 15th, and even a school like Oklahoma has decided to wait until July 1st to report. So I think that's what sort of the rest of June's going to be about, as these teams start gathering and how they're handling the testing and the results of the testing. So, all right, Souichi, when we come back, we're gonna take a break here. When we come back, we're gonna hear from Eli Drinkwitz and part of the Zoom call that he held with reporters, talking about this issue and the march and the voter registration. Interesting stuff by Eli Drinkwitz, one of the few coaches, by the way, in college football that I think had any kind of media availability this week during the week of protest and demonstration. So I was thankful for Eli Drinkwitz for doing that. So, all right, Souichi, great talking to you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Blair.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
Been a while, and there's a lot of things to discuss. So first, I just want to say how proud I am to be the head football coach at Mizzou, and how proud I am of this football team and this staff to stand alongside some very powerful leaders, Ryan Walters, Brick Haley, DJ Smith, Charlie Harbison, Marcus Johnson, Bush Hamden, Eric Link, Casey Woods, David Gibbs, and countless others on this staff and our players, for us to decide that it wasn't enough just to make a statement, but to also put action behind our words. It was a really powerful moment for me personally, and I believe it was a powerful moment for our team, for unity and cohesion, and to stand up for what is right. I made this comment. This was a clear instance of right versus wrong. And we tell our players and we tell people that when something is wrong, stand up against it. And what happened to George Floyd was wrong, and we stand against that and we fight for justice. And that's as clear as we can be about it. It was wrong, and it's time for as a nation to call out right versus wrong. And that was wrong. And we stand for justice, and not just to call it out, but to also Curtis Looper is very much a student of history and talked about, becoming a more perfect union. We're not perfect. Abraham Lincoln said it right. We're trying to fight to become a more perfect union. And the way that we can do that is to fight for equality and to use our voice at the ballot box. And so that was where the action of registering to vote came about. It was a very powerful moment. Would like to thank both MUPD and Columbia PD for joining us on a strictly volunteer. Every person that came volunteered to walk with us and to take a knee with us and to join in our call for justice. And so for that, I couldn't be any more proud of our football team and these great men, these giants and men that I stand beside every day, that I'm proud to call teammates and to coach with these guys. And so with that, I'll open it up for questions and go from there.
All right, Coach. Thank you. Let's see. Andrew Kaufman, I got you first. You should be unmuted. Go ahead.
How's it going, Coach? Just first off, with the why was it so important for your players and all the student athletes that were marching yesterday to vote? And why was that such a important step, you think?
Well, because voting is about making your voice heard, and it's about creating a more perfect union. And we have, if we want effective change, change is not a sprint; it's a marathon. And we were backed up by the voice of President Obama, past president, former President Obama yesterday, talking about the importance of voting. I think we've again, Coach Looper talked about the right to vote was in the 60s, and they fought for 100 years to get that, and that's our voice right now. And it wasn't about tearing stuff down or trying to create any type of violence or anything like that, but it was about how do we create positive change through utilizing our voice. And we don't talk about who you want to vote for. That's strictly your choice. But the opportunity to vote, instead of complaining, do something. And that's a way to do it with this voting. And Andrew, last time I made some comments on here, you cut me up and you created some funny deals. So just be careful, because I'm going to start cutting you up too. Okay. I'm going to start.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see.
Let's see. Next to Soren Petro. Soren, good to see you with us. You should be unmuted.
Yep. Thank you very much, Chad. Thanks, Coach, for the time today.
Yep.
I know the statement the players made. I'm curious. We obviously had a big story break last night and continues today with Drew Brees talking about his comments if anybody kneels and what the flag meant to him, and that's created a major uproar. He's since apologized. The kneeling was a big issue 3, 4, 5 years ago, and colleges didn't really go down that road, but this seems to have much more momentum this year. The subject of players kneeling, has it been discussed with the team? Do you have a policy? Does the university have a policy as to how that will be handled if players do choose to kneel for the anthem this year?
We're very much focused on right now and what we're trying to do, which is stand for the justice of George Floyd and to create a sustainable action that promotes change. And that's my policy. And I think part of the problem and part of the issue right now is that we're losing focus on what we're trying to accomplish, and we're chasing a lot of different rabbits. And I've been told a long time ago, if you chase 2 rabbits, you'll catch none. And so I'm not even in that. I'm focused on what we can do right now for the justice of George Floyd, how my players can be heard, and how do we put an end to inequality right here for my players here and in the future. So that's really where I'm at with that whole thing, and haven't had any discussions further.
Okay, next to Colin. Colin, I got you unmuted.
Hey, Coach. Before I ask my real question, I wanted to ask real quick, do you have a preference in spelling your first name on first reference, E-L-I-A-H, or just E-L-I? Does it matter to you?
If I'm in trouble, it's probably E-L-I-A-H. That's usually what my mom says. Eli is really if we're kind of friendly. But I have no preference. I respond to either one of them. My dad calls me Eli all the time because he came up with it. So. Okay.
I just wanted to ask. I don't know if you've been filled in on this, but Missouri football players participated in a student protest here on campus in 2015 with the Concerned Student 1950. And I was just curious, has the legacy of that carried over at all with this team? And if you've been caught up, who kind of helped you catch up with what happened in 2015?
No, I think that's the whole branding of Mizzou. I was not here in 2015. And I don't believe anybody on our current team was here in 2015. This is about our moment in time right now and what we can do to create a conversation for social justice and equality. And we have not discussed that. And, I think, this is not a political statement. This is an equal rights statement. It's a human rights statement. What happened to George Floyd was wrong, and we call it out for what it was, which is wrong. And so, we're not trying to tie anything together. This is about this moment in time and what's going on. Y'all can't see my screen right here, but there's a Web3 right next to me. It's got like all kinds of different video going on, and it is really distracting. But no, Colin, to answer your question, no, I not tied into 2015. This doesn't have anything to, that we're talking about George Floyd and how we can create sustainable action for change moving forward.
All right, Mitchell, 40, you're next. Go ahead.
Hey, Eli, kind of going back before the march, when did players first kind of start expressing, an interest to you and to the staff in speaking up and trying to do something? And what was just the communication process like between you and your staff and the players?
Yeah, I want to be very, after some other things, I want to be very accurate about what my timelines here. So Friday at 11:30, we had our first, our staff individually had discussed it with their players on Thursday because you had started seeing the tensions of last week. And then at Friday at 11:30, we had an impromptu team meeting and Zoom phone call, and had a conversation where I addressed them and coaches addressed what was going on. And then we followed up with position coaches. I believe the first time I was approached about doing something was maybe Saturday. One of my players, either Saturday or Sunday, had sent me something about participating in an event, and there was just some different issues and concerns with which how do we go about this, trying to be as safe as we can, and so that was when the conversation really started. And then our players were not asking for permission; they were seeking for support for right versus wrong. And so that's so as we continued the discussion on yesterday, we had a 1:00 team meeting, and we just said, they had already said that this is something that they wanted to do and attainable action. And so we said, okay, we'll meet you at the columns at 2:00. Let's go.
All right. Next question, Harold. I think I've got you unmuted if you want to go ahead.
Hope you're doing well, Coach. My question
Great.
to you is over on this side of the state in KC, obviously Patrick Mahomes sent out a statement about having a locker room and how he had brothers in his locker room coming together. I'm wondering for you as a coach, obviously you having a different background than many of the players you do coach, how have you gone across trying to bring both of them together? And did this kind of unify them to come together as one voice together, obviously with the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery? And then going forward, what do you expect out of your players to kind of keep the momentum going of what you had with the walk yesterday going forward? Yeah, I know you got a season to coach, but I know a lot of players, this is a very important issue to them. How do you want to keep it going forward?
I want to be clear. It's an important issue for all of us. It's not a us versus them. It's all of us versus racism. And so this is not a situation where it's a them thing. It's an us thing. And so I want to be very clear on that. It is an us thing, and by us participating in the walk, we're all behind the fact that we are committed to equality. So yeah, you're always trying to, we have a list of 4 core values and a stated goal, right? So behind me, it says our goal is to win the SEC East in a bowl game with class, integrity, and academic excellence. Class is the way we go about a day-to-day basis, but integrity for us is that our words and our actions align. And so you're always trying to find something where you can actually use an illustration of something that's going on real world and apply it. And yesterday was about that. It was about taking our words and our statement and applying actions, and that is integrity for us. That's integrity. And that's what occurred. And then the second thing is, we have core values, 4 core values that we live by. And one of them is about building trust and respect within the teammates in the locker room. And the only way you build trust and respect is through investment over time. And COVID has robbed us of time. But I believe that this action and occurrence that happened is going to allow us to come together and form a bond. Because, again, this is not a us-them. This is right, wrong. And our guys chose to stand up for right. And, I think that hopefully that answers your question, Harold.
Yeah, and going forward, anything you
guys? Yeah. So we actually do. We've created an action plan about how do we sustain change and how do we become people of change? Because, again, it's not enough to just say right now. It's like I said earlier, equality is a marathon, not a sprint. And so we do have things, and I don't want to get into all the discussion of what we've got working because I haven't unveiled the entire plan to our team. But it started with the voting box and registering to vote, and that's one start. But there's going to be more that involves service back to our community. There's going to be more about creating opportunities and internships with their degree. And then I think the very mission of college athletics, the very mission of college football, is that we give young men an opportunity to get a degree because we believe education changes lives. And I have to, and our staff has to understand that it's bigger than football, and it's about ensuring that these young men get a degree so that they can be educated and they can help change. And so it's all of those, and we do have a very, very informative and active plan that's going forth, and our players are going to be inundated with that.
Okay, Eric Blum, I got you unmuted. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach, hope you're doing well. I'm curious, just beyond it being the right thing, as you said earlier, how it felt for you to be a part of the march and any feedback you got from players afterwards, if they were registered to vote and hadn't been registered to vote, of gratefulness, or just how was the bonding experience of the actual act of marching itself?
I want to be very careful. You know, the interaction with me and my players is between us, and it's not for anybody else. It's for us. And it was a powerful moment for me that changed me. And it was for me. It's for me to grow and learn. And so, you know, the interactions that I've had with my players about what's going on, that's for me to grow and learn. And it's not for public consumption, just to be blunt about it. I felt, I saw where George's daughter was on, I believe it was Steven Jackson's shoulders, and she said, "Daddy changed the world," and he has, and that's really what hit me, was he's changed the world, and this conversation is so much different than it's been in the past, and that's powerful. And it's changed me, and it's changed all of us, I believe. And I'm thankful and I'm grateful that I'm grateful that I get to be close to such strong men on this staff, and I'm grateful that I get to work with them every day, and I get to have the courage to do the things that we did because of them.
That'll do it for today and this week on SportsBeat KC. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. A tip of the cap to Souichi Terada for joining me today to talk Mizzou and the SEC. Links to the stories we discuss about the Tigers can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, earlier in the episode you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer, and still a good one, $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes the Sports Extra on the e-edition. There's an additional 26 pages of national sports coverage today. But here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole enchilada. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus extra news, sports, and business coverage. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. Whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.